Half a day and welcome. My name is Holly Rustick and I'm president of the Guam Women's Chamber of Commerce. And I'm very excited for this webinar today. So thank you all for joining us, as we do have Ricky Hernandez in the house today. And he's going to be talking about the new GITA grants that are rolled out from the Lulian Guerrero administration through GITA. We're really excited about this. This is some of the CARES Act money coming down, and Ricky's gonna be talking about this today. But before we get started, I just wanted to go over some housekeeping today. So you might notice that you do not see your video on screen, and you might be saying, where is it? It's okay. You're not gonna see yourself on screen today, and that's all right. But what you can do is go ahead, and if you have any questions throughout this webinar, while Ricky's talking, you can go ahead and put your question in the chat box, and we'll definitely be getting to your questions once he's finished with his presentation. So that'll be a lot of fun. The other thing I wanted to bring up as well is that this is presented by GITA. GITA is one of our sponsors for the Guam Women's Chamber of Commerce, so we're very excited about that. So here we have our Q&A on the Guam Small Business Pandemic Grant that is being once again administered through the Guam Economic Development Authority. And just to, before we get started, before I introduce our special featured guest today, I also want to say that we do have our Industry Advisor Program for the Guam Women's Chamber members. This is a great program as it gives you access to industry advisors as part of your membership. So if you're wanting to apply for this grant and you say, I'm not sure if I have all of my gross receipts tax, if I'm not sure how to do that or exactly where to go. I mean, Ricky's gonna break it down, but if you just want that extra hand to help you get it through and just to be able to do it real quickly, we definitely have people that can help you out. Just go ahead and you can email connect@guamwomenschamber.com and you can get access to an industry advisor to help you walk one-on-one through this process at no cost to you. That is part of your membership. And of course, it's not only for this grant, industry experts, they're also, maybe you have a question about legal, something legal in your business, HR. There's a lot of things in human resources that are changing right now. Maybe you have specific questions for that, or you're looking at doing more marketing, going online, and you really want to meet with an industry expert. We definitely have those experts available for you. And once again, up to 3 hours you have with your membership. So please do email Eileen at connect@guamwomenschamber.com. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our esteemed guest here. This is Dr. Ricky Hernandez, and he is the current Deputy Administrator for the Guam Economic Development Authority and was recently appointed lead for the Governor's Recovery Panel of Advisors. He is also an adjunct instructor of accounting and public administration at the University of Guam, the Investments Committee Vice Chairman of the Government of Guam Retirement Fund Board of Trustees, and a board member of the Research Corporation for the University of Guam. Prior to serving at GITA, he was the longest serving director of the Guam Legislator Office of Finance and Budget. And I also wanted just to say, I'm also working with Ricky on the Recovery Task Force. It's been a lot of fun. He is just one of the hardest working people I know. And he's really doing all he can in rolling out these monies, getting them out to small business, working with us, with businesses and with the private sector. So it's been my pleasure. So once again, welcome, Dr. Hernandez. Thank you so much for being on this webinar today.
Yeah, thank you, Holly. And thanks, Eileen. And just on behalf of GITA, thanks for allowing us to present and just do some outreach as it relates to this program. As Holly mentioned, this is obviously a team effort, and the team here at GITA, obviously inclusive of our CEO and administrator, Melanie Mendiola, and our team here, we've rolled out this program that we're going to be discussing over the next few slides and or next hour or so. And I'm hoping that this answers some of the questions that you might have. Obviously, we're wanting everyone to understand the process. We made it as simple as possible. We hopefully made it as simple as possible. And, hopefully by the end of this, there won't be any questions, but obviously I'll be open to questions as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Okay, so. Okay, so thank you again, Holly and Eileen and the Guam Women's Chamber of Commerce. Again, my name is Ricky Hernandez, Deputy Administrator here at the Guam Economic Development Authority. And I'm going to be presenting on the Guam Small Business Pandemic Assistance Grant program. And, you know, before, when I teach some of my students at University of Guam, I unfortunately have to tell them the level of the number of people that typically pass the class based on my experience in prior classes. I won't tell you what the percentage is, but I'm hoping after the end of this presentation that the number of applications that we have to go back to will be 0%. So I'm hoping that we get 100% accuracy in the applications after this presentation. Okay, so I want to kind of go over a brief introduction of this program, where the funds came from, just to kind of get everyone kind of understood on where these funds come from, why we're able to provide this program, and how much is available. So I'm not going to read everything on this slide, but basically the CARES Act, the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Securities Act, basically provided what is called coronavirus relief funds in the amount of $117.9 million to the government of Guam. That was a portion based on population. It was a carve out of $3 billion that was shared amongst the territories and the District of Columbia based on population. And so the government of Guam received almost $118 million in these coronavirus relief funds. And so the guidance for the coronavirus relief funds came out toward the end of April. And in that guidance of the use of those funds, authorized the states and territories to use some of these funds. Obviously, the main use of these funds were really to address the public health emergencies that states and territories are currently and are experiencing and will be experiencing over the next several months. Included in that guidance is the ability to cover reimburse costs associated with business interruption for small businesses. And so the governor of Guam, Lulian Guerrero, had identified 20 million of this 117.9 million and provided it for small business direct grants. And so that's kind of where the money came from. The authority and the limitations on the use of these funds are basically provided by the U.S. Treasury, who administers these funds. And so a lot of the restrictions on them that we might be going over in the next few slides are based strictly on the guidance that has been provided by the U.S. Treasury. So let me just get into eligibility requirements for this grant program. We're really targeting here small business applicants. And so some of the eligibility requirements, they're very simple. And if you don't fall into any of these, then obviously eligibility will be a concern. But your business has to maintain a valid Guam business license. And we're understanding of the issue over the past several couple months related to the inability to update update or renew your business license. And so I know we're under the understanding that the Department of Revenue and Taxation has extended those business licenses that have expired on March, April, May, and June through July 31st. So if you submit a business license that may not have been, that may have expired during these time periods, those will be considered for the purposes of this program as a valid Guam business license. What's not on this slide is probably those professional services. So if you're a professional service, such as an accounting firm, obviously you probably don't have a Guam business license. You might have gotten a permit to operate from the Guam Board of Accountancy. So those types of, we just want to make sure that you're a valid operating business on Guam. You have to also file income taxes on Guam. And then you have to also have been in operation on or before October 1, 2019. October 1, if you're in business after October 1, like October 2nd, then you would not be eligible for this program. The business also has to have experienced what is called business interruption, which we'll go over in the next slide. And lastly, your business had to have generated gross receipts of less than or equal to $1,500,000. And that period of testing that $1.5 million will be from months ended March 2019 through February 2020. So if you're a business that was in operation for less than a 12-month period, you'll notice on the bottom with the 2 stars, we'll be talking about how to calculate, but you will be using your annualized gross receipts for the purposes of determining the eligibility as it relates to being under $1.5 million for that 12-month period. So what is business interruption? So the way we've identified and defined business interruption for the purposes of this program is the reduction in gross receipts of 25% or more when comparing your month ending April 2020 gross receipts and the average monthly gross receipts based on annual or annualized, if actual months of operations is less than 12 months, gross receipts between months ending March 2019 and April 2020. I'm sorry, February 2020. So business interruption, if you're, obviously we're trying to target those small businesses that have been negatively impacted by the not only the coronavirus itself, but also the closures as it relates to COVID-19. And the thought behind this is that we wanted to use the period in which your gross receipts may not have been impacted greatly. And so that's why we use the period March 2019 through February 2020. So what's the required documentation that you'll need? The grant application obviously is online on our website. So that needs to be filled out. And there's a lot of information there that's necessary for us to determine your eligibility. Additionally, there's a self-certification form that'll confirm some information as submitted as being true and correct under penalty of perjury. So this self-certification form will include some items such as the use of funds, which we'll go over in a little bit, as well as I believe there are some additional requirements that we'll be issuing out on kind of an updated self-certification form that we may release today. You also need a copy of a current Guam business license, and obviously, again, current Guam business license, if it has expired in March, April, May, or June, we'll accept those just given the fact that Department of Revenue Taxation has extended that through July 31st. As well as we need basically 14 months of GRT filings. So GRT month ending filings from March 2019 through April 2020. So you could, a lot of individuals file them online. Some of them go in and get a stamped copy. So either way, the e-filed ones we've been getting a lot of those with the watermark having been e-filed. So those are obviously acceptable. If you're a business that commenced operation on or after April 1, 2019, we'll need the GRT filings as of the first GRT filing month through the month ending April 2020. Okay, so if you're a business that has opened and has been in operation for less than that 12-month period, just give us as many GRT filings as you can, but obviously you had to have been open on or before October 1, 2019. So we'll just get into the grant calculation steps. And this is, obviously there's a lot of, I understand that probably a lot of businesses that may have already been through this process. So I just want to kind of repeat myself, and then we'll kind of get into some more detailed frequently asked questions that we've received over the last couple days. So the first step is to calculate your annual or your annualized gross receipts. So for your businesses in operation that's on or before March 2019, obviously you have 12 months of information, so we already know what your annual gross receipts are. But for the annualized gross receipts, obviously, we'll go over the exact calculation of this. But we're going to take however many months that you have in gross receipts. We'll divide that by however many months it is. We'll divide the aggregate amount by how many months that you have provided in gross receipts forms, and we'll multiply that by 12. So we'll annualize whatever months that you had gross receipts filings. Step 2 is we'll calculate the percentage of business interruption. Okay, and so this might seem a little bit complicated, and we'll probably just kind of go over the examples that might flesh this out a little bit more. But essentially what we're trying to determine here in this case is that you meet the threshold of 25% impact based on your GRT filings. And so what we'll be doing is, I'm not going to read this specifically, but what we'll be doing is we're going to take your month ending April 2020 gross receipts, and we're going to compare that to your average monthly gross receipts. And if that calculation yields a difference of more than 25%, 25% or more, then you'll be determined to be eligible. Last step here in terms of calculating the grant is just to identify the grant award amount. So you'll see here on the bottom or kind of the middle of the slide here is the grant table. So there are different brackets and there are different amounts of maximum grants that you can receive within each bracket. So to calculate your actual grant amount, you're going to get your basically your monthly gross receipts, your average monthly gross receipts, and you're going to multiply that by 25%. And so whatever the lesser of the formula calculation above or the max grant will be your basically your grant award. Okay, and so as an example, obviously we'll go over those in the next couple of slides here. Okay, so here's a couple examples that we're going to go over. Scenario A will be pretty much a basic application, an applicant that has 12 months of gross receipts filing between March 2019 and February 2020. And scenario B, where we'll have an annualized gross receipts. In this example here, this business operated beginning September 2019 and is in current operation right now. So under scenario A, obviously here, I mean, this is a very simplistic example, but we'll just kind of go over just how to calculate your grant. And so in this case, this company had annual gross receipts of $120,000. So in this case, this business will fall under grant table bracket A, right? Between 1 and 250,000. So in order to get the average monthly receipts, obviously this is a very simplistic one because it's $10,000 every month, but the average monthly gross receipts is going to be calculated as $10,000. And so in this case, the maximum grant, obviously, we know to be under bracket A, which is $5,000. So to calculate if you're eligible, obviously we have to calculate if you're impacted or if your business was impacted by more than 25%. And so what we want to do here is we want to take your month ending April 2020 form GRT. We used April 2020 because we believe that was basically 100% of impact on the closures of businesses. Because the closure of business, I think, began in a little after the middle part of March. So April 2020, we believe, was the full impact of the business closures. So in this case, in this example, this business had $1,000 of gross receipts in the month of April. And so the business interruption amount would be $10,000, which is the average monthly receipts minus the $1,000. So obviously you have a business interruption percentage of more than 25%, in this case 90%. So we are determining that this applicant is eligible for the grant. And so how do we calculate the grant amount? You just take 25% of the monthly gross receipts, which is $10,000. And in this case, the grant amount would be $2,500. So in scenario B, we'll talk about this one. This business, again, obviously opened and started filing gross receipts for the month of September, month ended September 2019. So in this case, we have to first calculate your annualized gross receipts. Obviously, the annualized gross receipts for this, in this example, would be just taking the total gross receipts that you have on your 6 filings in this case, and divided by 6. And so the average monthly receipts would be $10,000. To annualize it, we're just multiplying that by 12 months. So in this example, the annualized gross receipts is $120,000. Therefore, the maximum grant under grant table bracket A is $5,000. And so this is basically the same calculation as before. We're taking the average monthly receipts, subtracting the month ending April 2020 gross receipts, which is $1,000 in this example. The business interruption would be determined to be 90%, which is obviously above 25%. So this applicant is eligible, and therefore the grant amount is 25% of the average monthly receipts, which is $10,000. So let me just get into kind of the grant application process. Obviously, step 1 is, this is pretty basic, but just download the program application, which is found on our website, our GITA website at investguam.com/smallbusiness. You want to fill out that form. I think it's a fillable PDF form, and sign it and submit all the other required documents via email to smallbusiness@investguam.com. We had a couple issues in terms of our online portal where you could just upload documents directly. So we've converted to just sending it via email to our smallbusiness@investguam.com email account. GITA will provide a grant application number to the applicant via email. And we're currently working on that. Obviously, our target date, I think, was within 2 days, but obviously with the influx of applications, we'll be kind of pushing that back a little bit. But once we kind of get a handle of the influx, the initial influx, we'll be providing that grant application number. which will provide you basically your place in line. GITA will also then provide a status update after reviewing the application packet with a notice of decision to be sent via email. And so we're targeting 5 days, 5 business days to provide that type of information. But again, we ask for everyone's patience as it relates to the influx of a lot of these applications. But that's our internal target, 5 business days to give you a notice of decision. If approved, the grant award is, we basically send a list to the Department of Administration, and they'll be cutting the checks and sending them to the mailing addresses that are identified on your business license, as well as on your grant application. So this was mentioned by our administrator, Mel, during one of the press conferences that, and this was as a suggestion based on discussion with the chambers. So a lot of the specific details of the program was crafted internally by GITA, but then we also presented them to the different chambers of commerce, Guam Chamber of Women's, Korean Chamber, Chinese Chamber, as well as the Guam Hotel and Restaurant Association. So we were provided some suggestions by other individuals in the business community, some of which had requested that for those businesses that did receive federal funding through the Paycheck Protection Program or the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, including the advance, the EIDL grants, that those that weren't able to get those funds, that they be, not deprioritized or not ineligible, but try to prioritize the smallest of small businesses as well as those that haven't received any funding just yet or at all. So in this case, the payment priority will be the first $10 million in grant funds will be paid to program applicants that have annual or annualized gross receipts of $500,000 or less and did not receive any funding through the U.S. Small Business Administration, PPP, or the EIDL loan program. Upon awarding the $10 million in grant funds, all businesses that applied that are eligible, obviously under the $1.5 million cap, that applied will be paid in order of submission to the program submission of their program application and if they were approved to receive a grant. So this doesn't negate you if you make more than $500,000 or did receive a PPP loan or an economic injury disaster loan or grant to apply. You could still apply. We will put you in order of when you submitted your application, but payments for those will occur after we have exhausted the first 10 million in grant funds. So we do have 20 million, so the first 10 million will be exhausted specifically first for our smallest of small businesses. And just to let you know, kind of give you an update on the interest in the program, just over the last few days, we've received over 9,000 page views for the small business page, over 5,000 unique page views, over 3,000 application downloads, and over 1,000 emails received. And so when I say emails received, that could be questions, that could be multiple emails from the same applicant. That doesn't necessarily mean that there have been 1,000 applicants to date. We're still processing those as I speak. And so I just wanted to kind of give you an understanding of at least the interest in the program, and we urge everyone to, as quickly as possible, gather your documents and submit them to us as soon as possible. So just talking about post-award and the self-certification. So on the self-certification, there is use of funds requirements, and these are really driven by the guidelines associated with and provided by the U.S. Treasury. So the use of funds for businesses is for the sole purpose of reimbursing costs of business interruption caused by the required closures. And obviously locally, the required closures were pursuant to Executive Order number 2020-03, which was dated March 14, 2020, which include but are not limited to costs of payroll and employee benefits, mortgage, or rental costs and vendor costs. So obviously post-award, to ensure the integrity of the program and to also show obviously the government of Guam as well as the U.S. Treasury that there is some integrity in terms of the use of funds. We will be conducting post-award audits and so therefore we encourage small businesses that are awarded some grant funds to know that they're subject to an audit, but also obviously to ensure that they keep records of the use of the funds. So those, obviously I'm not going to explain what the specific parameters of what we'll be auditing, because it may simply be a random audit. But we do intend to ensure and review the veracity of the information and the documentation provided on the application, as well as on the self-certification. Okay, and so kind of winding down here a little bit. So I'll just talk about some of the questions that we have received just over the last few days as it relates to some of the specifics of the program. So for the first question I'll kind of go over here is, am I eligible to receive grant funds if I meet some but not all of the eligibility requirements? And the quick answer to that is basically no. You have to ensure that your business satisfies all requirements and eligibility requirements to be awarded a grant. Second question here is, if my business commenced operations during the month of October 2019, but after October 1, am I eligible to apply? Unfortunately, the answer to that is no. You have to have been a business open on or before October 1st. There's another question that are property management companies eligible to receive grant funds? I think this is very specific to questions that we've received, because I didn't go over ineligible. I did not go over ineligible businesses, but I'll kind of just go over that right now. So obviously, if you make more than 1.5 million or annually or annualized, you're not eligible. Additionally, nonprofit organizations are not eligible. Landlords or businesses solely involved in passive investments are not eligible, as well as shell companies. Just to determine, and I know there's probably a lot of questions on why those are not eligible. It's our understanding, at least for the nonprofits, that we are directed to use these for small businesses, as well as what is provided in the guidance for the CARES Act, specifically for what the governor had provided us the money for. And so these are supposed to be for business interruption. And so in terms of nonprofit organizations, I believe in discussing with Mel, our CEO, if you're a nonprofit organization that actually files GRT because you have some revenue generating activities, we're just kind of talking about it, but obviously on a case-by-case basis, if you do have those types of activities that require the filing of a GRT, then those will be looked at on a case-by-case basis. For landlords or passive activity, in discussions with the chambers, they, in agreement with them and in discussion with the business community that we did talk to, it was decided that, at least in terms of this program, that we would be focusing solely on these active type businesses that also probably employ a lot of individuals. And so in the case of the third question, are property management companies eligible to receive grant funds? The answer to that is yes, obviously, if they meet all the eligibility requirements associated with the program. The other question is, I own more than one type of business. Can each business receive grant funds? And the answer to that is yes. If you're a business that owns multiple restaurants and they make less than 1.5 million each restaurant, they have each restaurant has their own business license, each file their own GRT forms, then yes. If you own more than one type of business, then each business can receive grant funds if you fall under all the eligibility categories, and the grant calculation obviously will be for each individual business. Next question is, I currently do not reside in Guam, but my business is located in Guam. Can my business receive grant funds? And the answer to that is yes. If you meet all of the requirements, file income taxes on Guam, maintain a business license on Guam, et cetera, then you will be eligible for the program. Next question here is, I have not filed my GRT form for the past several months since the public health emergency declaration. Can I submit an application? And the answer to that is no. You have to have filed your GRT forms. Keyword here is filed. We'll talk about payment of GRT maybe in the next slide. But you have to have filed your GRT form. So GRT is open at the moment. There is online filing options as well. So you have to have filed GRT forms, because that's one of the requirements of required documents to submit is your GRT filings. So you have to file those first before you submit an application, or you obviously will be deemed ineligible. Next question here is, are only non-essential businesses that were required to close under the public health emergency declaration eligible to receive grant funds? And this is a really good question, but the answer to this is all businesses. It doesn't have to be businesses that were considered non-essential that had to close under the public health emergency. You could be a business that were still essential, or you could be a business that was not considered non-essential and closed, or you could have been a business that was essential and still remained open. The key here is, and the control really is, were you impacted by coronavirus? Was there business interruption, right? So if you go through the calculation and your business shows a 25% or more decrease in gross receipts, then you're eligible. So it's not limited to those that only closed. It's open to businesses that are eligible based on our criteria. Last one on this page is, I was not able to renew my business license because of the government closure. Am I still eligible? And the answer to that is yes, obviously. If you are, and I guess there's a little bit of a caveat here, if you're a business that was open March, April, May, and June, and you weren't able to, sorry, not a business open, but a business that wasn't able to renew your license in March, April, May, and June, then your business license will have been considered extended to July 31. Unfortunately, if you were a business that was in operation and you did not file it because in February and it needed to be renewed in February, then you have to go to Department of Revenue and Taxation and renew your business license, because they don't view those that are prior to March not having been renewed as extended through July 31st. So if you did not renew your business license on any month prior to March and it's still not renewed, then you have to go back. You have to go to DRT and renew those. So some questions related to application. So what is the application period? So the coronavirus relief funds actually have to be expended by December 31. So our application period is through December 30th, not December 31st, but December 30th. So the application period is until December 30th, but we expect this program will be done before then in terms of the exhausting of funds. Next question here is, I have filed my GRT forms, but may not have paid the tax due. Can I still apply? The answer is yes, as long as you have filed the forms with DRT and you are in some type of arrangement with them to pay your tax liability, you may apply. So we're obviously expecting that businesses are under some type of payment arrangement if you have not paid the tax due. And so the self-certification form, I believe, will include some information as it relates to that. How long will it take to receive an application number after I submit my application? Our target date is 2 days. But we ask for everyone's patience. If it may not be 2 days, it could be 3, or just a little bit longer. But we're working as quickly as possible. We have our entire staff really working on this program to really not only stand it up, but also to be processing eligibility, compliance, as well as determining the process to obviously get information to the Department of Administration to make those payments. But yeah, we're targeting 2 days internally. And how long will the review and decision process take? Obviously, we wanted to ensure that this program was very simple, straightforward, and easy for businesses to apply for. So that helps us as well. It helps us on the eligibility determination. It helps us in processing it. And so we're hoping, obviously, within 5 days internally to get 5 business days to get an answer to those applicants. You don't have a computer. You don't have access to a computer, printer, smart device at home, or any internet. You can come in, submit an application, or you can get an application here, fill it out. We urge those that do come in. Obviously, we're practicing social distancing, the requirement of wearing a mask. Our office is located in the ITC building on the 5th floor. When you get out of the elevator, you can see our office immediately. If you look left and we're not there, then we're on the right when you get out of the elevator, and vice versa. So we're open, and we've been receiving paper applications since we started. So if you need assistance with that, you can also call our GITA, basically our grant hotline, which is, I think, 647-4338. And lastly, use of funds. Will I have to repay all of the monies received? And the answer to that is this is a grant, and I think this was kind of related to, is this a loan or is this a grant? The quick answer to that is no, you don't have to pay the monies if you think it's a loan. It's not a loan, it's a grant. So they do not need to be repaid. But in the event that a post audit is done and uses of the funds were determined to be ineligible, then the small business that may have been audited may have to repay those funds for the portions or portions that were used for ineligible activity, possibly the entire amount. Will I have to provide a report on how grant funds were spent? The answer to that is no. This is obviously a near honor system, but obviously we're doing our due diligence to ensure we maintain the integrity of the program. But there is no requirement to report how you spent the funds. The self-certification requires that you do not spend it on ineligible costs. The program indicates that grant funds are to be used to reimburse costs of business interruption as a result of COVID-19. What does this mean with regards to how a business can use grant funds? And I guess this is just kind of a repeat, but again, it has to be to reimburse costs associated with the business interruption and as it relates to the closures of businesses. So you could be a business that actually closed, or you could be a business that was impacted by the closure of other businesses. Those are kind of the uses of funds, obviously payroll, vendor costs, essentially those costs that were impacted as a result of COVID-19. And so I think that's the end of my presentation, Holly. I'm open for any questions, and I thank you again, just on behalf of Gita, Mel Mendiola, my CEO, administrator, and the staff. We thank everyone for your time and the opportunity to be able to present this information. I just want to say that this is obviously, we tried to make this as simple and straightforward as possible for our business community, but we understand that oftentimes things are not perfect up front, and that we may be making changes just as federal programs like the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program, is obviously undergoing some issues. But in the creation of this program, we look to the issues that some of these other federal programs were facing, as well as other programs in the States. And we try to make sure that we don't fall back into those, we don't commit those same errors. And so it's obviously this, we hope that that this is a simple process, but we do understand that there may be some hiccups along the way, and we ask for everyone's patience for that. But with that, thanks, Holly. I guess I'll give it back to you.
Thank you so much. Okay, let me go and start my video. Thank you so much, Dr. Hernandez. That was a very comprehensive and easy to understand webinar, just to go through all of those processes. And once again, thank you for including us on the conversation before you release this to get feedback. So just to let you guys know out there, all of our members, that we were representing you on some feedback within the development of this grant process. And I also just wanted to thank the Lulian Guerrero administration, because looking at the amount of CARES Act and looking at $20 million to go to small businesses, and we're looking at under 1.5 million, which might sound like a lot, but honestly, the amount could have been a lot higher, right? So it's really looking at very small businesses, and just saying 20 million is almost 17% of that. Like that's pretty amazing of the entire CARES Act, right? Monies that are in Guam. So it's just, it really shows the support of private business and the impact that we have in the community. So I just want to throw that out there, because I thought that was super impressive. And especially like you were saying with the PPP, there's a lot of discussion about that right now. And I think that was really smart of Gita to say, okay, the first 10 million, let's go for people who have not received that have are less than 500,000 annual gross receipts, because those might be the companies that don't have huge corporations, you know what I mean? They don't have the capacity necessarily to have gotten in on the PPP in the beginning. So to designate the first 10 million to roll out specifically for that, I think was really, really smart. And it's going to help a lot of our really smaller businesses on Guam. So I really appreciate that. All right, so we do have some questions. So I'm going to go ahead and ask you some questions, Dr. Hernandez. So we have one. Yeah, sure.
Sorry, can I just, this might answer a few of them. As it relates to your gross receipts, there might have been a question regarding wholesalers or those that have exemptions, right? So we're looking at your column A, line 14, or column A, gross receipts prior to exemption. So that's what we'll be using to determine your gross receipts. So if you're a wholesaler, there's a lot of exemptions, obviously, in column B. So we're using column A.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right, so we have one, our business, this is from an anonymous person on the line. They said our business did submit documents for the grant to GITA the day it was launched through the automated system. We understand the submission requirements changed to be sent via email directly. We have not been contacted by GITA with a grant application number yet. Do we need to resubmit documents?
Yeah, so then that's a good question. So we tested that online application automated system extensively, but I guess we couldn't simulate the level of interest in the program the way it came in. So we did have to move to an email-based format. So I guess the answer to that question is our staff, for those that did submit automated through the automated system, our staff was supposed to have called you directly. And if they have not done so, I would suggest to call our GITA hotline for this program to ensure that you show them that that you submitted the application. So if you did not get a call yet and you did submit through the automated system and you didn't get a kickback email saying that it was submitted, then for whoever the individual is of the business, please give us a call and let us know what the situation was, and we'll obviously rectify that situation. Not a problem at all. As it relates to resubmitting documents, you may need to resubmit the documents, but I believe there is a timestamp in terms of the automated system when you did submit. So that's why I just urge you to just give us a call and we'll rectify the situation.
Okay, that would be great. And I know part of that is this is a first come, first serve basis, right? So that's important to have that timestamp or to get that call. So that, and Eileen can put the number once again in the chat box. Okay, we have another question from an anonymous attendee. What is the best way to ensure privacy and safety when emailing documents? For example, would you accept a Dropbox link to our files?
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. Obviously, privacy and safety is our utmost concern. For those that apply as it relates to privacy, the names of the business that are approved for grants, as well as the application number, will be subject to government. Obviously, if individuals do a Freedom of Information Act request, those are the types of information that we will be providing. And so I believe upon award, that will be made clear to everyone that at least the name of the business as well as the application number is disclosable. As it relates to accepting a Dropbox link, I don't think there's any issue for us to be able to accept the Dropbox link for those businesses that feel that they want an extra level of security. But yeah, that shouldn't be a problem.
Okay, and I just want to add to that too, if you are submitting a Dropbox link, you might want to just make sure it's shareable because it could be locked on your end just automatically from your privacy settings, so they can't get in. So that might be something to just consider when you send the link. So we do have more questions here. Let me go ahead and scroll up. And you might have actually answered this one already. Do cost of goods sold need to be deducted from the gross receipts calculation?
Yeah, I guess the answer to that is no. We're not looking at expense side of your business. We're only looking at the gross receipts side. That might impact those that made a lot more in gross receipts as it relates to your type of business. Obviously, if you have a high volume and obviously have higher cost of goods sold, then that may deem you ineligible. But there is no subtraction of any expenses. We're looking at gross receipts as filed on the GRT-1 forms.
Okay. And another question from Ms. Celine San Nicolas is, my business was licensed in March 2019, but did not start receiving income until November 2019. Do we still qualify for the grant?
That's a good question. I think for those months, and this obviously case by case, but my assumption is that if you had to file GRT forms, even though it was $0 for the periods in which you were licensed, you are deemed as a business that started on or before October 1. But you would have to provide those GRT filings for those months where you weren't receiving income, but it was licensed. And so that'll determine, and that'll kind of fall into your eligibility determination on how to calculate your grant award.
Would that be somewhat like scenario B that you shared with us on the slides, as far as they didn't they weren't reporting, you know, they reported 0 for 6 months and then they started, or maybe even if they made less than the 40, right? But then they started reporting at that point in time.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's actually a really good question. It's actually a really good question because, you know, obviously, you know, some businesses, you know, may just get a business license and then start actually receiving gross receipts in a different month other than when they initially started. But the intent here is, I mean, if you read the eligibility requirements, it's really if your business started or was in operation on or before October 1, and in this case, the business was licensed in March 2019, and the assumption is that it was in operation. But if there was no gross receipts that were received, we will calculate from the start of when you started your business. And so that may drop your grant award amount because obviously based on your on the months where you were receiving 0, and it might impact your eligibility on the 25% side. But I urge Celine to submit your application with the information. Obviously, this situation is a very unique one. We didn't actually foresee this one. So I'd suggest to submit the application and we'll run it through our process.
Okay, thank you. And then we have a question from Jennifer McFerrin. Would transitioning your business online qualify as a valid use of funds under the grant, i.e. cost to start a website or set up a shipping vendor?
Yeah, you know, it's
so
interesting.
It looks like maybe trying to be more social distancing and that sort of thing, right?
Yeah, you know, in terms of the CARES Act or the Coronavirus Relief Funds requirements or guidelines to use the use of funds, it specifically says the government can use it for expenses related to providing small businesses grants to reimburse the costs of business interruption. And I think that if you know, the term reimburse means, you know, when you read it on its, you know, plainly, it's for costs already incurred, and so you can reimburse it. So, I mean, if you read it that way, and you use the funds for reimbursing prior costs, then you basically have cash flow up front to be able to use that additional cash flow to do other business related items. So it's a good question. I think I'll bring that back to the team to maybe give you a clearer answer on that. We'll be releasing some FAQs over the next day or so. So it's a good question, and it's a timely question because we want to address that before we start awarding funds. So thanks, Jennifer, for that question.
Okay, great. Another question from Nicole. I lost a few consulting contracts due to the shutdown. Can you file for the missing amounts?
Few consulting contracts due to the shutdown.
So her business, it sounds like her business was impacted because consulting, or she wasn't getting the contracts that she normally does due to the shutdown. So can she file for that missing amount?
Yeah, so I guess I can just answer the question with, you know, if you file your gross receipts and we see that there's a 25% drop and all the other eligibility requirements are met, then you know, the amount of the grant and the use of the funds that are authorized or eligible, you could use it for, you know, if I'm trying to understand the missing amounts portion, but I guess if you fall under all the eligibility requirements or you meet them, then you could use them for, you know, we calculate the grant and you'll get the money and then you can use that for the eligible uses. So I'm hoping that answers the question. Yeah.
She says thank you, so hopefully it does. Okay. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So let me see. Okay, I got another question on this side. So sorry, I got questions coming in from different sides. If the first 10 million is reserved for businesses that did not receive funding from the PPP program, when would this program release funds for those businesses that did get the PPP loan?
Yeah, sure. No, that's a good question. So we don't have it on a lot of our materials. The expectation is that we'll probably roll through the 10 million over the next few weeks. But what we've discussed internally, and I think what Mel had mentioned at the press conference that we held at the beginning of the week, was that we would probably wait around 3 weeks or the earlier of using $10 million or 3 weeks. And then at that time, we will look at the applications that we have received for those businesses that did get PPP loan funding or EIDL grants or EIDL funding from those loans. And we'll be paying those out in chronological order in the way in when we receive them. So you know, I hope that's hopefully we can get through 10 million before 3 weeks, but we're looking at at least 3 weeks or earlier, depending on the use of the funds.
Okay. I don't see any more questions from our attendees, but I have a couple of questions I just wanted to address.
Sure.
Just to bank off of what you just said, thank you. To bank off of what you were just saying, if the 10 million is not expended in that first round for some reason, then you're just giving it the timeline of 3 weeks, say, that parameter. And then if you do not receive them, then you're going to go into the second round, which might be more than 10 million if all of that first 10 million is not expended. Is that correct?
Yeah, let's say in 3 weeks, we only expended or awarded $5 million. So there'll be 15 million for all those businesses that made under 1.5 million that did receive some funds from those federal programs. So it'll be open to basically everyone.
Okay, yeah. Just I wanted to clarify that. The other thing to clarify too is I don't believe I saw it mentioned here in the ineligibility, but I believe it's online. Sole proprietors, are they eligible to apply for this?
Yeah, I mean, I think the key here is if you have a business license and you file GRT, then you meet all the other eligibility requirements, then you're eligible.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, perfect. And then just to also emphasize, so nonprofits who do file GRTs for their program income are eligible to apply for this, for that specific role of their business or their nonprofit.
Yeah, so if there's there's some enterprise or for-profit or profit-generating activities of nonprofits. I think I was talking to Mel Mendiola about it, and we seem to be receptive to that. So as those come in, if they do come in, we'll look at it on a case-by-case basis. Okay,
all right. And then I do have another question here from Randy.
Sure.
Can I submit what I have for now and submit GRT for 4/20, so for April 2020, when available, so I can be in line?
It would help us a lot if you were able to submit everything at once. I guess our system is, because this was thrust upon GITA at such a last minute, we don't have a automated tracking system for this. So if you could submit all of your documents at one time, that would be great. There are some that were submitting their documents, and I know that there was some confusion in the beginning. The way we perceived what we wrote on some of the materials that we put out was not what was perceived by some businesses. So when we said that we wanted April 2019 GRT filings through March 2020, the assumption was that would be March 2019 GRT that is filed in April. But I guess
right.
So what I'm trying to get at is there's a few applicants that submitted all of their documentation but did not provide the month ending March 2019. So we had to call them back and submit it. But to the maximum extent possible, I know, Randy, that's probably not answering your question, but I'm trying to make it easy on the staff here instead of having to go back, because we'd have to kind of put some kind of tab on that. And we're expecting and hoping that the simplicity of the application process could allow for the submission of all documents at one time. So I mean, I think for the April month ended April gross receipts should have been filed at least 2 days ago. So there may have been confusion because of what we perceived, what we put on materials didn't really kind of convert into what everyone else perceived. There are a lot of questions about, well, my May GRT is not filed until June, so how can we submit it? So the answer to that is that the expectation was that we were only looking for your month ended April 2020 gross receipts, which would have been filed on May 20th, or at least by May 20th. So I hope that we wanted to kind of clear that up, and we changed some of the materials online to reflect that change. Okay. Yeah.
Well, that's really good to know. Yeah, and I can see how that could be a little bit like trying to explain that, right?
Yeah.
Thank you
Because
for
when I
clarifying that.
think about it, I think of, when I used to do budgets and looking at revenues, when we assess the impact of revenues on activity that may have happened a month prior, there's, I always refer to it as, and, April, when you get May 2020 GRT revenues for the government, I always know that that's from April activity. And so, I guess it just didn't translate clearly, but hopefully it looks like from the applications we've been receiving, it's been made clear. So.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Okay. Yeah. So those are fantastic. And once again, I really, we appreciate you from the Guam Women's Chamber. I know our members appreciate this money that is being rolled out for small businesses, and in a very, it's a very streamlined application. I'm a grant writer, so I know like a lot of grants can ask for a lot more than this. Like, it's very streamlined. It's very, user friendly as far as what you guys are just email it in. So that's fantastic, and already receiving potentially, over 3,000 applications, right? Yeah, 3,000's downloaded, so 1,000 emails received. So you could have received around 1,000 applications already. So I encourage all of you guys out there to apply now to get it out there, to get those monies in right now, because there is a large demand as we see. So once again, thank you so much. We're having a lot of thanks from you guys in the chat box. So thank you guys for attending. Once again, Dr. Ricky Hernandez, thank you so much for being on this call today and working with us in the Guam Women's Chamber of Commerce. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Holly.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.